Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We're going to talk about Guru, Shastra and Sadhu. Yeah? We're going to talk about Guru, Shastra and Sadhu. And at the end, if we get time, we can talk about Vaishnava dealings. Yeah? How we can deal with, we can just read about that if you want. I don't think we'll have time for everything. So I'll read about Vaishnava dealings, right? And then, we can talk about, we can expand on that. So this is from Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita. So this is by Narahari, what's his name now? Narahari Sakar Thakur. He was one of Lord Chaitanya's close associates. So these associates are not ordinary people, they're actually usually eternal liberated souls, Nitya Siddhas. And they come with the Lord when he performs his pastimes in this world. And they take on different positions in order to enact a certain leela. And these leelas are there to attract the conditioned souls, the pastimes the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in this case. So this particular literature he also was the author of Chaitanya Mangal. And Hare
Krishna.
So there's only 500 copies of this in existence. It's an introduction. The Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita is the original work of Sri Narahari Sakar Thakur, the famous devotee who offered Lord Chaitanya the personal service of fanning with a chamara. Sri Krishna Bhajanamritam is possibly the only known book which deals with practical aspects of dealings between disciples and Guru, including the Guru's fall down. Therefore, Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita is very timely for better understanding the authorized manner in which to deal with sensitive issues regarding initiating Gurus and Shikshagurus. His Holiness Bhakti Swami informed me of the existence of this book. Without his encouragement, we would not have endeavoured to locate it. The Bhaktivedanta Swami Charity Trust, which Srila Prabhupada founded for preserving Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya culture and heritage, in addition to promoting its unity and mutual cooperation, has been researching lost shrines and holy places for nearly a decade. The newest project is to locate lost or out-of-print literatures in original language and to reference copies for the use of sadhu and scholars around the world. The Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita is the first book located in this new project. A little bit of history behind it, right? The Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita was only printed once, as far as is known, in the Bengal year 1309, which brings it to the late 19th century. Only 95 copies were printed, and therefore were printed and has therefore been out of print and unavailable for quite some time. But with research, the last known copy was located at Srikant, the birthplace of Sri Narahari Thakur. In a torn and blackened condition, even the threads in the binding have turned to dust. By Lord Chaitanya's mercy, the book was loaned to the Bhaktivedanta Charity Trust for republication and translation. So it is just about gone out of existence. It was just almost dust. The smell of it. Only one copy left after 95. And so when I read through it, I thought it's quite important, this. You know what I mean? It's interesting information. The Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita is 64 pages long, but only the first 16 pages deal with Guru Tattva. The remaining part of the book deals with Sambandha Tattva. Sambandha means understanding the goal of devotional service. In regard to Lord Krishna's expansions, energies, demigods, etc. In ISKCON at present, specifically need shastric direction in regard to some aspects of Guru Tattva. Verse 27 to 67, which deals specifically with the subject matter of Guru Tattva and Vaishnava relationships, is being presented. Is it, everybody following okay? It's not so easy when you're just reading. But it's something different. Although the first 19 verses simply form the introduction to the book, they are also included since they help the reader to get a clearer understanding of the background to it and Sri Narahari Thakur's purpose in writing Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita 1926. Given the explanation of topics which the book covers other than Guru Tattva, so they are also included. 1926 is not included. Okay. So you got something extra there. I put start here. I should have started here. Anyway, these verses are glorifying, the Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the first verse. The second verse is glorifying Shukadeva Goswami, passed down the right source of Vedic knowledge. 3 and 4. During the Kali Yuga, when the time of Lord Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Sri Nityananda Prabhu transcendent pastime become manifest. So, it seems like when Lord Chaitanya appears, that he's only here for 48 years, or is it 49? Anyway, that's all. So, what happens then? No, these pastimes are always going on in Navadvip, but we can't see them, they're unmanifest. So the period when Chaitanya Charitamrita was written, in pursuance of his earthly pastimes, that was his manifested appearance. What do you call it? Manifested? Prakat. Prakat means manifest. Aprakat means unmanifested. But no, if you go around Navadvip in Bengal, on the Parikram, there's so many pastimes. See, I've not heard this before. And it's the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. and they're still going on now. They're eternal. So, this is how I support. In my sleep while dreaming, I said the above words. While dreaming, I was meditating upon the words of previous authorities and great Vaishnavacharyas and their conclusion on the authorized Shastra in regard to pure devotional service. While thus engaged in my dream, suddenly my heart became filled with spiritual bliss as I had entered and taken shelter of an ocean of transcendental nectar. I'll stop that. So this is all, he's actually explaining how he felt. You know, writing transcendental literature, it's not just like, you know, you give it a bash, I will try and write something. You know, it's like people have to encourage you. You have to get the sanction of the devotees, and you know, there's usually signs that you should write. Just like Shama Sundar. Shama Sundar, he was Prabhupada's first secretary, and there were so many pastimes that he just used to speak about. So it means that when he left the world, they'd be lost, unless somebody took a few notes. And so he had actually got sclerosis of the liver, so it's incurable. It just actually degenerates until you die. And so, you know, it means he hadn't got long to live. And then they were encouraged by devotees. You know so many pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. You should write them. And he said, I ain't got time left. And then, so what they did, they actually they advertised amongst the devotees to donate a part of the liver. And there were so many people who wanted to do it. And when the surgeon who were actually guiding him, he said, usually people don't want to do that. We can't get anybody because it's risky. He said, but there were so many devotees came forward. They donate part of half of the liver, I think, and then the other half grows back eventually, so they have to go through some trauma themselves, you know. And so he had this operation, and he's now still kicking, you know. He's wrote these 3 books, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. Has anybody read that?
No.
Yeah? You should read it. They're very good. He's a very good writer. And what does he mean, chasing rhinos with the Swami? It's an unusual name for a book, isn't it? What does he mean? You know. Chasing rhinos with the Swami. You know what a rhino is? It's a rhinoceros.
Is it because it's like hard to chase a rhino? So it's
yeah.
like because rhinos are difficult to chase, so it's...
Has anybody tried to catch a rhino? Even, you know, it's like impossible. They're armor-plated. Even if you shoot at them, you're not supposed to have any effect. The turn of a vehicle was boom. So it's you see, it's, you know, something which is very difficult to do. To say it's chasing a rhino. In other words, there's not much chance of being successful. And so if you fail, people say, it can't be done anyway. Nobody will criticise you, you know. But if you do it, everybody will glorify you. Wow. And so it relates how Shama Sundar was, you know, Srila Prabhupada gave him some ideas, because he was another adventurous person, something, you know, which were really difficult, and he just go and thought, well, if Swamiji wants me to do it, it must be possible, and he used to do it. And so, the point I'm making here is that he was actually sanctioned by the devotees, he was blessed by the devotees to write it. So that's the mood of writing any, you know, spiritual literature. We get the blessings of the devotees. Okay. And He says here, is everybody following okay, or is it getting a little bit
That's fine.
difficult to follow? Okay. On the strength of the mercy of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I decided to write something using my intelligence. I have considered the truth of devotional service. And although considering myself a fool, I have written in my own hand, sometimes in verse and sometimes in prose, this supreme auspicious Bhajanamrita. This really starts talking about that Vaishnava relationships. Amongst all assembled Vaishnavas there is the initiating Guru and the instructing Guru. In regard to them, what type of behavior is authorized? How do you deal with them? How do you? It is certainly true that all Vaishnavas are on the same transcendental platform. However, although amongst Vaishnavas there may be difference in spiritual strength, how will the less intelligent, materially attached sense gratifier who has become afraid, justly seeing the horrifying appearance of a beggar mendicant, ascertain the actual strength of a saintly person? That's pretty hard to understand, isn't it? I'll read that again, see if anybody can catch on. Right, listen. It is certainly true that all Vaishnavas are on the same transcendental platform. So that means we're following the same process. So we're considered pure. We may not be pure inside, but we're following a pure process. And so I believe Vaishnavas should be respected. However, although amongst Vaishnavas there may be a difference in spiritual strength, how will the less intelligent, materially attached sense gratifier, who becomes afraid, justly seeing the horrifying appearance of a beggar, mendicant, ascertain the actual strength of a saintly person? Has anybody got it? I don't know. Since the
Would you repeat the last sentence again, the last one about the beggar and the saintly person?
Well, it says amongst Vaishnavas there may be difference in spiritual strength. You can understand that.
Yeah.
How will the less intelligent, materially attached sense gratifiers, well, the karma in other words, who becomes afraid just seeing the horrifying appearance of beggar mendicants. So when we see beggar mendicants, it can be pretty harrowing. They come up to you, backsheesh. Everyone wants to avoid that, right? They don't want pestering or even threatening, maybe. So I can understand that. Who becomes afraid just as seeing the horrifying appearance of these men? How can he ascertain the actual strength of a saintly person? Let's read on a bit. Amen.
How can he attain this?
How can he ascertain the actual strength of a saintly person? Since they cannot distinguish between a lesser spiritual force and a greater spiritual force, they do not know how to deal appropriately with different saintly persons. I think it means that his consciousness is very low. That's the way I read it. They do not know how to deal with it properly with different saintly persons. Therefore, they treat everyone on the same, one and the same. Since they don't know how to distinguish the specific character of a greater spiritual personality from a lesser spiritual personality. We're going to talk about this in a minute. We're going to be alright here. Since they cannot distinguish between lesser spiritual force and a greater spiritual force, they do not know how to deal appropriately with different saintly persons. Therefore, they treat everyone the same. Since they don't know how to distinguish the specific character of a great spiritual personalities from lesser spiritual personalities, rather than risk their destruction for neglecting a potentially spiritual personality, they treat everyone on the same level. They've got no option, have they? They don't know. So it depends on what level they treat them. That's the thing. Don't we understand?
Yeah.
However, all those practicing Vaishnavas progressing on the path of devotional service who have heard and understood the conclusion of revealed Shastras and are therefore endowed with special intelligence are able to recognize who is more spiritually powerful and who is less spiritually powerful. Those who are expert in the science of devotional service can understand in whose body what quality of Krishna's spiritual potency is present. Being able to understand who has less spiritual potency and who has more spiritual potency, they offer special treatment considering the scriptural injunctions in this regard. So, in one respect you can say that everybody offers respect to a sannyasi. But it may be that, he's not as advanced as somebody who is not a sannyasi. So it takes special intelligence to see who is actually advanced, not just by ashram, you know what I mean? That's what it's talking about. If one is distinguished between if one can distinguish between a greater or lesser spiritual strength of a person, but does not accordingly offer respect, then that person shall be held guilty for that offence. When you first come to devotional service, you might start talking to somebody who's like a Paramahamsa. Well, mate, it's not really offensive. I'm not asking for a light, So that's not. But when you start practicing, it's talking about, then you should be able to be a bit more careful. But there is mentioned before, if two Vaishnavas come at the same time, one of greater strength, one of lesser spiritual strength, first one has to offer respects to the Vaishnava of
The greatest.
then offer the Vaishnava of lesser strength. Should the respect due to a Vaishnava of greater strength or to a Vaishnava of lesser strength be offered at the same level if they come at different times? So if they come at different times, won't be everyone. So let's see. Equal respect should not be offered to both, even if they are not present at the same time. So we always honour somebody who's more advanced. Okay. I think everybody appreciates this anyway. If a volcano type of fire is burning, the wise man will not first put out. The wise man will not first put out. First one has to be able to extinguish the volcano fire. Then a candle of deep light can easily be extinguished. Similarly, if one is able to appropriately receive the respect of Vaishnavas possessed of great spiritual force to their satisfaction, then only shall it be easily to be able to satisfy those Vaishnavas of lesser force. Why is that? You have to respect appropriately to a powerful Vaishnava, and so if you can do that properly, you can offer respect to others.
Is it once we've offered our respects to a greater Vaishnava, then we don't necessarily, I don't know.
You see, because ultimately everybody is part and parcel of the Lord anyway,
Yeah, so you can ignore the rest. You've done it to the gaffer. You have to treat everybody I'm not exactly sure. Let's have a look.
Someone who's a greater Vaishnava will be in the level similar to that, or will be more aligned to the level where you see an acharya, sannyasi, and a guru. So if you've offered your
Well, what I quite often see when I'm travelling is that, everybody's like, somebody who's advanced, a spiritual master or a sannyasi, and then they ignore everybody else. Somebody who's not very intelligent, I've seen it happen so many times. So that's why I can't properly understand it.
Is it because that person practices tasting more sincerely than the other person and their blessings might help you become more sincere in your practice?
I don't know. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. If a person of small spiritual advancement sees a great devotee endowed with considerable spiritual potency being worshipped and given respect, should the less advanced person become angry upon seeing this? For this offence against the more advanced person's spiritual position, the foolish spend will ruin whatever spiritual potency he possesses. Subsequently, in the future, such angry persons simply plan how they can punish those who have participated in such worship. So we shouldn't be angry at somebody like, we should expect, something. Why is he getting all that praise, and everything like that? Those who are well versed in all these matters have heard properly from authorities. Those Vaishnavas who are enthusiastically engaged in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all those transcendentalists who are practicing the spiritual path, know the truth in regard to these matters. However, in spite of knowing these truths, if they do not appropriately offer worship, then they will be spiritually ruined. However, if they consider the respective spiritual strength or lack of strength accordingly offers respect, then they will certainly advance in Krishna consciousness. If we're ignorant, it's not so bad, but we shouldn't stay ignorant. That's the point. For those who take shelter of great Samaru mountain, what can others do to harm them? Others should offer them worship as devotees with respect and service. One should never engage in criticizing a Vaishnava or neglecting a Vaishnava, even in joking. For Vaishnavas are so glorious that there is nothing to regret, even if one sacrifices one's life for their benefit. You've got to be careful cracking jokes. It's good enough all the time, isn't it? I just only believe that bit.
Good job, I didn't throw it back. Good job, I didn't throw it back.
I'll probably get a reaction for that. One should find fault with a Vaishnava. Oh, no one should find fault with a Vaishnava for his activities or behavior. What person is free from the influence of Kali Yuga or has perfect, pure behavior in action? Does that sound alright? There is actually a situation, I may explain it later, that if you are actually you have responsibility for some devotees, like you're a temple commander or temple president or mentor, then you have to actually correct them. It's wrong not to correct them. It has to be done in an appropriate way, of course.
So is there a difference between correcting someone and finding fault with them? Like, what's the fine line? Like, if it's for their benefit and their spiritual growth, is it good to sort of let them know what's going on, that they're not doing something right? And then just stay away from gossip. Like, what's the fine line between fault?
Well, if we haven't got a position of authority, we can't speak. Otherwise, we put his foot in it. You can speak to their authority, or to somebody who can speak to their authority for him to do it. What we should, we have to do.
It should be encouraging and not detrimental.
Yeah.
It should be with love, not detrimental.
Yeah.
So if you encourage someone with love, it's a lot different than being detrimental. Don't do that in neophyte.
Yeah.
Come across it a lot in the temples. The neophytes are going to pull you up all the time, and there's a way of doing it.
Yeah.
But still, somebody who's not got responsibility of others, he shouldn't actually deal with it. The one who has got responsibility, he has to do it in a loving way. And then, it can be accepted. If he does it in another way, it's not so good.
Yeah.
You put it on there.
Sorry?
Did you put it on there?
No.
What did you put it on there?
I lived in place.
No, it's okay now.
Because Vaishnava devotees of the Lord are always meditating on the Lord, Sri Krishna, the contamination of sinful activities cannot come upon them, because a Vaishnava body has the fire of Krishna consciousness within it, even if they are fallen. Even if they are fallen, this fire of Krishna consciousness will burn up to ashes any material contamination. That's excellent thinking about. So let's try and understand this in a practical way. If somebody falls away from the process, then the fire's still there, it's been ignited. But at that point it's not burning much, because it is actually not following. It's like when we practice devotional service, it's actually the seed of devotional service is watered, and it starts to develop a plant. So that's started, and it's called a fire here. But the point is, HH Dayananda, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse, chapter 9, verse 30, that if a Vaishnava even commits the most abominable act, if he's properly situated in his determination, he shouldn't be criticized. He should be considered a sadhu. But then Prabhupada explains that further. Oh, it's mine.
I got it to the baby.
It's snap time. He shouldn't be considered because, and you might think, he might minimise that statement. Yeah, but what about him, But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the acharyas, I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes that Arjuna argues with Krishna on this point. Oh, wait a minute, and he said he can't understand it, and so Krishna says quite strictly, no, he shouldn't be actually. And then he gives an example. He says, he's saying to Vishwanath Chakravarti says, even if person runs off with a guru's wife. Even if somebody runs up with a guru's wife, you know, he's still saying, oh, at that point he's not saying it. But you know, we shouldn't, he's on the path. He'll get a good hiding. You know, he'll suffer like anything. You know what I mean? He'll not get away with it, but you know, he'll eventually come to his senses. So then, let Krishna deal with it. In other words, you know, what can we do? So that's a pity of everyone, isn't it?
It's like a spiritual bank account, Maharaj, isn't it? It's never diminished. They say early in Krishna consciousness that everything you do is like a spiritual bank account. So even if one does fall, the bank account's still there. You've already done the acts, you've already done the good. It's all accumulated there in the bank, in the spiritual bank account. Good.
Yeah, it might take a long time before you can draw it out then. You know what I mean? Okay, we'll go on to the next one. However, those who are not able to understand their respective levels of spiritual potency may take shelter of this example. As in the Ganges, there are many waves, and some of these waves are larger than the other waves, but all the waves are considered to be sacred, one wave being not considered more holy than another wave. Similarly, all types of Vaishnavas who are spiritually strong and those who are not so strong can be offered equal worship. Considering their respective perspectives in such circumstances, that can be accepted as perfect worship. Here completes the conclusion in this regard. So why do we understand that? You worship them all the same. We just before it was saying you didn't. You have a different respect to more powerful Vaishnavas. He says it can be offered equal worship. There's nothing wrong with glorifying a Vaishnava, in other words. You know what I mean? Especially to glorify them and to minimize them. So if in doubt, leave it out. Yeah.
Maharaj, you see, if you treat everyone the same, then you less chance of you making a mistake. If you're just equal to everyone, then you're not going to misjudge anyone or offend anyone.
No, you know, you don't, like you said earlier, if you remember, if you offer proper respect to a powerful Vaishnava, then everything else is fulfilled. Because you can offer that same respect to everybody else,
Yeah.
and it'll be, you know, you won't make a mistake. Yeah? But it said also that you should offer different types of respect to different Vaishnavas. So the mood should be that everybody's better than me. You know what I mean? If we think like that, we'll offer proper respect to everybody, you know. I was at Chaitanya College, and now on way back there, and one back to the other, offering respect to everybody. One of the seniors was, she's offering respect to that chair now. So, you know, you get carried away sometimes. Okay, let's see what it has to say. All Vaishnavas are considered as Guru or spiritual master. Actually, if I go into town, you know, I've just been on the moor, you can learn something from everybody. You can learn something from everybody if we're introspective. Because Krishna's in the heart, you know, and if he wants to, he can say something to actually correct you. Has anybody found that happens?
Yeah.
Alright, we're going to, if one's initiating spiritual master and instructing spiritual master are of small spiritual potency, or in other words, if they do not possess a special power to give spiritual instruction on worship or devotional service, then one may listen from the mouth of other greater advanced Vaishnavas and understand the special instruction. However, thereafter the disciple must go to his spiritual master for his confirmation or instruction. So, you know, there's different levels of spiritual masters as well. So if we find it, you know, that we may advance in certain ways in more than the spiritual master, it's possible. But you know, we never think like that. If we do, then we fall them. But you know, he may send us. You know, he needs some instructions I can't give him. Go and take shelter of so and so for this particular instruction, like that. In that way, it's a family. It's not a competition. This becomes a family, and we're all under Prabhupada's protection. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, but we should make sure if we get instructions from another spiritual master, we go back to our own spiritual master and get it clarified and sanctioned, and then we keep proper respect. Otherwise, what we'll do, we'll just start following another spiritual master, and we'll maybe not give proper respect to our spiritual master. Yeah. So Vaishnava etiquette's very perfect. Any confusion so far?
No.
Okay. One should not disobey the order of the spiritual master. Just as a faithful son may go out for earning money and subsequently brings to his father the wealth gained, later the son may ask for some allowance from the father, and whatever he receives from the father is entitled to spend of his own enjoyment. Similarly, if a disciple may hear some instructions from another advanced Vaishnava, but after gaining that good instruction, he must bring it and present it to his own spiritual master. After presenting them, he should hear the same teachings from his spiritual master with appropriate instruction. So he should give the teachings in his own way, because he knows the mentality of his disciple better, and he should add other things which will help him to follow that instruction. That's the beauty of having a personal relationship. Unless, obviously, the super souls here, but super souls everywhere, is not sort of giving everybody intelligence that choose up whoever you talk to. You know, there's a certain process. In Bhagavad Gita it says a devotee cannot be without knowledge. He cannot be without knowledge. Because Krishna's there. And if we're trying to advance, he'll understand. Of course, what we hear from inside, we don't act on it straight away. We go and ask the Vaishnavas. Otherwise, you know, we might think that it might not be the supers. You know what I mean? You know, it might be our mad mind. Go and get that ice cream down there, you know. Get me one while you're at it. Prabhupada wants to give in a class, and there was chiming in the background. Has anybody heard that one? Ding, 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 ding. You got like really faint. Ding, 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 ding. And Prabhupada kept talking, then a few minutes later, dinky dinky ding, dinky dinky ding, dinky dinky ding. And then a few minutes later, dinky dinky ding, ding, and it started interrupting Prabhupada. He said, what is that? It's an ice cream van, Prabhupada. You are taking ice cream? Don't take ice cream. For this reason, For this reason, in all circumstances, all Vaishnavas are offered respect, like offers respect, like one offers respect to one's spiritual master. However, with body, mind and words, one serves one's own spiritual master. Whew. That's safe, isn't it? That's safe. Is everybody doing that? Put your hands up. Difficult one, that. I know there was one devotee, they call him Dr. Fakir Mohan, and he was initiated. I don't know how he got that name. But he won't reveal his spiritual master. He was an associate of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. So he was considered advanced, you know. And I had the good fortune, you know, I was in the Brahmachari ashram, and I was organising the classes. And so this time I had to go and fetch him from Boreham Wood, you know, in the car. So I had a bit of association with him. And he was like so humble, you know, unbelievable. In fact, me and Dayananda Maharaj, he was in Belgium. He got, what do they call it when you're, diabetes, and so we were only taking Shukta. And so we went to visit him, and then he says, and then for some reason we had to go upstairs. We were only going upstairs, and he followed us upstairs like this. As you know, you know, when there's somebody, you follow them to the gate, don't you? You don't just sort of shut the door and run away. You follow them, and so he followed us upstairs. We were only going upstairs to the bedroom. So, and when he gave a class on the Holy Name. He didn't give a class on, and when he, you know, when he started talking, after a while he started going for your bead bag, you know. Sounds pretty powerful, this, you know. And then at the end of the class he'd say, please give a question, please. He wanted some Krishna Katha, you know. You don't forget people like that in a hurry. For this reason, in all circumstances, let's go to the next one. Even if the performance of one's devotional service or devotional activities, one has disobeyed the spiritual master, still one should not give him up, but should remain